people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist? You're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs? Fuck you. War.
Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
War.
This is the end game.
All right, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 26th, 2025, the 38th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Welcome to the subscriber stream, everybody. Thank you all very much for subscribing. As always, I guess we should just get right into it. Got to start this episode where I started my morning. And that is with the now infamous Trump Gaza video. And if you haven't seen it, well, now you have.
Tunnels coming to set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza, number one. Trump Gaza, shining bright. Golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza, number one.
Wow. Now that is quite a project. In my old life, the clubs and the nightlife, that could have been an ad for a new club opening up in Miami. Head on down there for New Year's Eve. Somebody order up the jet. Let's go. Trump and Elon walking around the now developed Gaza Strip. They need a boardwalk in that thing. It's going to be, I guess, like the Western Dubai, relatively speaking to Dubai. You got Netanyahu and Trump there sunning themselves at the end. Trump doing a little Trump dance with some club ladies, I guess. Everybody loves little Trump in the club. And people got, I guess, pretty upset about that this morning, which was funny. I thought that we were supposed to trust Trump. Now, I can't imagine Trump spent his evening last night using some AI video app to create that Trump Gaza extravaganza. I don't think that's what happened. I would bet that someone showed it to him and was like, is this hilarious or what? And he said, yeah, that is hilarious. You know what I'm thinking?
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
It really is just called We Do a Little Trolling. It's not a big deal. That's what it's called. But people were upset nonetheless. What is he doing? Trust him. That's what I've been told. Whenever it's about who's on the TV or which TV character is being brought onto the fantasy team, if it is criticized by yours truly, well, then all hell breaks loose. But if people get mad at the Trump Gaza video, AI shared to do a little trolling, that's totally okay. I wish Trump weren't doing these sorts of things. And so, you see, the thing is, the standard for whether or not you're allowed to criticize the thing that Trump's doing is whether or not it is going to make everyone's liberal friends cry their liberal tears so that Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh can have a nice coffee mug of those with you, or whether it's going to make those same liberal friends message you and say, you support that guy? And they make fun of Trump. Then they make fun of you. Nothing could be worse than when those commies make fun of you. I mean, sure, they wore 2 masks in their cars and they injected themselves with a toxic experimental substance that could not protect them from a disease that could not kill them. They believe that Putin staged a very brutal invasion of Ukraine, and the ghost of Kyiv and Snake Island and all of that. They believed Joe Biden received 81 million real lawful American votes. They thought that the paragliding go-kart incident might kick off World War III. But you can't deal with them making fun of you and saying, look how stupid and unserious Donald Trump is. How can you support this man? And I guess it's maybe post-traumatic stress disorder or something that makes Trump supporters immediately curl up in a tiny ball whenever their very serious liberal friends in the party of false decorum make fun of them. And that's what it really is about, isn't it? Don't want to lose those reputation points you've worked so hard to gain. The TV says we're winning all the time. And we like going along with that. Dan Bongino on the FBI, well, that's going to make those liberal friends re all the way home. So that's a good thing. We can defend Dan Bongino. Oh, you just don't understand him. Not about me. That's to the liberals. That works on them. This doesn't. So this makes us look bad. But no, it doesn't.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
It's called We Do a Little Trolling. That's it. Nothing to get upset about. But people get upset. What are you going to do? I'm going to have a look at the chat. See how you guys are doing. Welcome to the subscriber stream. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the podcast. I could not do this without you. Let us continue into our wonderful selection of everything the world can offer to you. And let's start with the most based of dictators, and you know who I'm talking about. The greatest dictator of them all. Yes, I mean Nicolas Maduro. He was out there this week talking about some differences between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and talking about the very, very brutal and dangerous Tren de Aragua.
Le digo al presidente Donald Trump, con respeto, pida los informes de los últimos 4 años del FBI y la DEA, de las oficinas en Colombia.
All right. So he's speaking in Spanish, as you can see. And I'll tell you what, I had one that had the translation playing right along with it. And maybe it's worth getting back to that for those of you who are watching the video online. Here we are. That's not it either. Anyway, so I have a translation, and I can give you what Nicolas Maduro was actually talking about there. This is a Spanish language article written about that little speech and translated here into perplexity. Nicolas Maduro, who was sworn in for a third term in Venezuela in January following his contested re-election in 2024, suggested this Thursday to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to request truthful reports from the FBI and the DEA to see the truth about Tren de Aragua, the transnational criminal gang of Venezuelan origin designated by Washington as a terrorist group. I say to President Donald Trump, with respect, to request the reports from the last 4 years from the FBI and the DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Administration, from their offices in Colombia, so that you can see, President Trump, who financed, who moved, who directed the famous Tren de Aragua, who took them to Colombia, who took them to the United States, he said. The Chavista leader, whom the U.S. does not recognize as president, stated that this quote-unquote criminal and violent group, which he reiterated was defeated in Venezuela, was intended to be used from Colombia with deep ties to the former U.S. administration led by Democrat Joe Biden to bring terrorism to the Caribbean country. If anything can be said about terrorism from the Tren de Aragua, the extinct Tren de Aragua, it's that they wanted to attack the country's cities with terrorism, and we prevented it with intelligence, with action. President Trump requests those reports so that you can see, I tell you with sincerity and respect, so that you can see the truth about the famous Tren de Aragua, Maduro maintained. He also expressed willingness to send his foreign minister, Ivan Gil, to Washington to deliver a report with names and surnames of UN bureaucrats who, he said, stole resources allegedly granted by USAID to the United Nations organs and to help Venezuelan migrants. The U.S. government officially designated Tren de Aragua, born in a Venezuelan prison, as a terrorist group this Thursday, as well as 6 Mexican drug cartels and the Mara Salvatrucha MS-13 gang. Trump has long claimed there is an alleged presence of Tren de Aragua members in the U.S. and has linked the gang to Venezuelan migration in the country. Recently, the government transferred more than 150 Venezuelan migrants to the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo, accusing several of belonging to the criminal group, which was rejected this Thursday by the Chavista leader. So that's about 6 days ago. Today, the North American nation reported the transfer of 177 migrants detained in Cuban territory to Honduras, where they would then be transferred back to Venezuela. Maduro's administration published a statement asserting that the extinct Tren de Aragua was at one time instrumentalized by foreign agencies such as the FBI and the DEA for terrorist and destabilizing purposes against Venezuela. Now, my good friend, Ghost of Based Patrick Henry, often talks about an operation in Venezuela conducted, run, overseen by Nicolas Maduro that is a parallel to the Hunter Biden laptop operation here in America. So Maduro has all sorts of evidence on the deep state, just like Donald Trump has all sorts of evidence on the deep state. And of course, this deep state, this global regime, they're uniparty faction in America, but the evil twin faction as it exists in countries all around the world is one and the same thing. And so they operate together, transnational criminal organizations. That is what this fight is ultimately against. And then, of course, the people that control them. But the evidence of all that is available to these sovereign nationalist leaders, of whom Nicolas Maduro is clearly one. Maduro is not actually some rival of Trump, as you can hear quite clearly. He was talking in a very relaxed tone. We've seen videos and played them on this podcast before where Maduro is saying plenty of nice things about Donald Trump. And so we have the issue of Tren de Aragua and exactly what that means and whether or not we have been hoodwinked, perhaps in a good way, about the importance of Tren de Aragua. Many of us just heard about Tren de Aragua for the first time in the middle of last year. We were going through these immigration issues. Finally, the Uniparty realized that immigration was an issue that the American people cared about. So after largely ignoring it for 3 years, all of a sudden it was a major part of Mike Johnson's package as it was being shown to us a year ago. And we might get into Mike Johnson's package as it looks now a little later in the program. But they wanted a bipartisan, which means unipartisan, immigration deal in that package. And each side of the Uniparty would get some of their, wish list included in that package. And we as the American people would be told that that's what solved immigration. And then suddenly it fell apart and immigration kind of stopped anyway. Isn't that crazy? Like the Uniparty didn't get the thing that was going to stop immigration, giving the Uniparty credit for stopping immigration, and it just stopped. It's like it's all a story or something. But then it got spun back up. We had Haitian migrants eating the dogs and eating the cats and eating the pets of the people who lived there in Springfield, Ohio. And then we had Tren de Aragua taking over apartment buildings in Colorado. At least we had stories about these things, and that's the same as them being real because it's on Fox News, and people like Dan Bongino tell us about them. People like Tucker Carlson, people like Ben Shapiro. All of a sudden, they're MAGA's best friends. Hey, guys, did you know that illegal immigration was a problem? Yes, we knew that. In fact, we also had a guy that was dead set on stopping it. He won an election back in 2020, and you guys all told us that he lost. Joe Biden received 81 million real lawful American votes. And that, hey, maybe things were a little bit off. The laptop thing and the Twitter files thing, like those ops that the public finally kind of understood. That was how they influenced the election. Even Megyn Kelly was willing to admit that. They never talked about the fact that our election system is totally incapable of producing legitimate elections. But what are you going to do? The Hunter Biden laptop, the Twitter censorship of that story, that was enough. Some media coverage, some media influence, that was enough to give Joe Biden that win in undue fashion. And let's just only focus on the presidential race. Let's ignore everything down ballot, and we'll pretend that all of those people are legitimate. But Joe Biden, questionable. Had things been different, maybe a different outcome, but there just wasn't the overwhelming proof of widespread fraud that would get us to be able to overturn this election. Therefore, we just have to call this man president for the next 4 years. Well, cut to last year, all of a sudden, everybody realizes that immigration is actually a problem. Now we can talk about it. Tren de Aragua. And of course, because these stories are coming out in the mainstream and they align with what Donald Trump was already disclosing to the country and kind of tipping us off as to which directions, where to look so that we could expose these things ourselves. Finally, it all came around. So the mainstream media is talking about illegal immigration, and Donald Trump says, oh, well, I can use that. Look at this, everybody. Illegal immigration. I told you this was a problem. Do you all see it now? Oh, yes, you do, because it's on the television. Perfect. Well, this story actually wrapped up 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but we're going to just go with it as though it's current. And we're going to plow ahead because this is useful. And so the Uniparty right, the Con Inc. media, they're telling this story. Donald Trump is able to just jump onto that car as it flies by. He has a hold to the spoiler. It's like a, I don't know, like a 1980s Trans Am or something. Just one of those little spoilers, not like a Fast and the Furious spoiler. That's crazy. And he's just, it's speeding down the highway, and Donald Trump's just his coat and his tire flapping in the breeze. And like, I can get inside this car. I'm going to take it over. I'm going to drive it. And he did that. And so now we have Donald Trump, the president, dealing with these issues, even though Nicolas Maduro already dealt with them. And he said pretty clearly, this gang is extinct, and it has been. And of course, Donald Trump knows that. And, but, it's out there now. People believe it. This is the timeline that it's being disclosed upon. So, or being disclosed on. Why did I say upon? And so he's going to ride along. He's going to catch that spoiler, and he's going to come out driving the car by the end of things. Let's see where we were just 20 days ago. This is Representative Michael McCaul. Now, this guy loves war.
Violent ones that we've seen out of Venezuela would fall under the foreign terrorist organization designation, and therefore that would justify their detention at Guantanamo, as we have released, or the prior administration released, a lot of the 9/11 terrorists, out of that facility. I think the key question here, Elizabeth, we need more detention space.
Yeah.
And you're going to see us appropriate those dollars in reconciliation. Guantanamo just happens to be a very isolated place on an island that has 30,000 detention beds, and we're taking full use of that, and we'll deport them back to Venezuela. The problem is Venezuela's not going to take them back. So what are we going to do with these dangerous, violent criminals?
So they could stay there indefinitely?
No, I do believe there's a due process. The justice system will be there. I think we're going to have to deport them. We'll see how the
What does he
president
keep
handles
looking
this.
at, by the way?
Venezuela is a very tricky one because Maduro, the dictator, who has facilitated these violent cartels, will probably say he doesn't want to take them back. And then we're going to have a standoff between the president of the United States and the dictator of Venezuela.
Yeah, I can't blame Maduro. I wouldn't want him back either. These guys are real thugs.
Oh, totally. Elizabeth and Michael. By the way, yeah, I said Michael McCaul loves war. Neocon, huge Ukraine supporter, supported all the Ukraine aid. And I mean, maybe it's all an op. Doesn't seem like that side of it is all an op. Someone should let him in on it, but maybe. Also supported the Repo Act, where they take all that seized and frozen Russian money, those assets, and then redeploy them. So unreliable narrator Michael McCaul there at the very, very least. So there was going to be a standoff between Trump and this brutal dictator who's never going to take back these terrible Tren de Araguas. Here is Donald Trump today on Truth Social. We are hereby reversing the concessions that crooked Joe Biden gave to Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela on the oil transaction agreement dated November 26th, 2022, and also having to do with electoral conditions within Venezuela, which have not been met by the Maduro regime. Additionally, the regime has not been transporting the violent criminals that they sent into our country, the good old USA, back to Venezuela at the rapid pace they had agreed to. I am therefore ordering that the ineffective and unmet Biden concession agreement be terminated as of the March 1st option to review. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So the conditions between the United States and Venezuela are going back to what they were before that mean, brutal dictator down in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and the fake and illegitimate president of the United States, Joe Biden, made that deal. Isn't it crazy? It's like we're just going back in time to make it as though these last few years never even happened. How does something like that occur? Who could ever see something like that coming? Let's continue with some big bad dictators. This is another dictator special. And again, I hope you guys remember that if you chime in with excellent episode titles that make me laugh, oh boy, am I going to use them. Oh, man. So there are Rumble rants in the chat. I'm going to quickly address this. Barely 45, $5. Hope you're sufficiently staying on the Hot Wheels loop-to-loop today. I feel okay. Mint Chalky Chip Supremacy. Yeah, I was going to list 5 different flavors of vanilla as my top. You would have been extremely disappointed. Thanks, as always, for the Clown World aggregation. You are welcome. To all of those listening on audio or only to this podcast later on. None of this is going to make any sense. And hey, that's how it goes sometimes. Mr. A. Nelson, $5. Patrick is leaving/left. Yes, he did. Patrick decided that he was going to focus more of his energies on some of his other projects. And I wish him the best. He has been a longtime friend of mine. And I think that that's all we're going to say about that. I really do hope that he does well for himself. But yeah, that was his decision. So what can you do? Let us go to the Russian state propaganda outlet, RT, that stands for Russia Today. It sounds like propaganda. Russia and U.S. discussing major deals, according to Putin. This is from yesterday. Russia Today from yesterday. Russia and the U.S. are in talks on major joint economic projects. The two countries recently took steps to reestablish dialogue after years of deteriorating relationships, or at least that's what we are told from the central narrative. Did Donald Trump maintain contact Vladimir Putin over these last few years? The answer almost certainly has to be yes. Putin hasn't talked to Biden in years. We'll get to that just a bit later. We know that Trump stayed in touch with Narendra Modi. He just told us that. What was that? About a week ago? 2 weeks ago? When Modi was in town in D.C. Told us they'd stayed in touch. He was meeting with Viktor Orban and Andrzej Duda of Poland and our boy Yuhu down at Mar-a-Lago. He stayed in touch with a lot of people while he, quote unquote, wasn't president. It's amazing how quickly he unwinds these Joe Biden things too. And kind of changes the perception of what some of these problems were, substantively speaking. Again, who could have seen it coming? The Russian leader's comments come 2 weeks after he held a phone conversation with his U.S. counterpart, Donald J. Trump. The U.S. president has made a sharp turn from the policies toward Moscow pursued by his predecessor. Some Russian and American companies are in contact and discussing major projects, Putin said in an interview. The Russian leader added that Moscow would be ready to cooperate with U.S. private companies and government entities to develop Russia's rare earth sector. Putin highlighted its critical importance in various industries, adding that Russia's large resources make it a global leader in the field. And you've got to remember that the whole eastern third of Ukraine plus Crimea are Russia. And it's also possible that the other 2/3 of Ukraine are Russia too. But for now, we know that those regions absolutely voted in referenda to become part of Russia. So they are just Russia. Those are Russia's resources. And we're told that they're Ukraine's resources because blah, blah, blah. People have blue and yellow flags outside their houses still. So we have to, use the short bus to get these people to school. And once they're there, we teach them the classes for the developmentally disabled, AKA retarded. Earlier in it, I can't talk now, I'm retarded. Earlier in the day, Trump teased major, quote, economic development transactions, which will take place between the U.S. and Russia. Writing in a post on his Truth Social platform, that talks between the two nations are proceeding very well. And of course they are. They've been done for a long time. After years of largely non-existent interaction, contacts between the two nations have intensified since Trump's inauguration. Putin characterized the discussions as a first step toward normalization of ties, these being the talks in Riyadh, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it incredible how it all comes together? Now, speaking of plans coming together and done deals being done whenever they were done, but now being announced as done, which is really what makes the deal real. It's not real till you hear about it from the TV. And the TV, by the way, does include websites like this one. Everything that constitutes the authoritative source or anything that the machine supplies to you, which means all of the social media sites that generate and provide content via algorithm, which is essentially all of them, you are getting the inflow from the machine. And as we discussed last night on Badlands Story Hour, Burning Bright and I, talking about the film Terminator 2, he mentioned Netflix and the way that it will feed you content based on what it thinks you want to see. And then I suggested, well, yes, that could be Netflix and its own algorithm with your Netflix history, but there's no reason to believe that it's not just feeding in from that great cloud in the sky that has all our data always in real time about exactly what we want. And then it supplies us with what we would like to see. It's strange, isn't it, that while we are winning so hard, that whole thing is still going on. It's like the Great Reset is just plowing forward. And right now we are watching the uniparty right side of that narrative that was already scripted in advance, as we talked about last week, and that Donald Trump, again, has just been running down the highway, meets up with the passing Trans Am, leaps as his coat just flutters in the breeze and his red tie flies out behind him, and he grabs onto that spoiler and says, I am going to commandeer this vehicle. And he just climbs hand over hand, smashes through that back window, just like the Terminator. And I just watched this two or three nights ago, which is why I know the scene breakdown so well. Anyhow, this is Axios today. Trump says Ukraine minerals deal done, and Zelensky visiting on Friday. And of course, he confirmed all of this in his little televised cabinet meeting today, which we are going to get to very shortly. Let me actually find the New York Times article, because we got some of the details of this mineral deal before the televised cabinet meeting even began. And supposedly there was some behind the scenes conversation before the in front of the scenes conversation began. And the media had access to that. They got to ask questions. Donald Trump continues to be the most transparent president of all time by far, and the most accessible. I would not include, as part of that, by the way, that special chair in the White House press briefing room. Caroline Leavitt announced that the chair, I think this was yesterday, that the chair belonged that day to the Blaze. So just the mainstream media, but the uniparty right mainstream media. And that's what makes it better. Don't you understand? That's winning. Okay. Axios getting that chair. That's what it started out as. that would be losing because this is just mainstream media. If they gave it to someone like Rachel Maddow or something, or the Obama podcast bros or whatever, that would be losing. But the Blaze, where Steve Deace is one of the main figures, that Trump hating lunatic who called every Trump supporter an idolater, when they're in that special seat, well, that's independent media. It's different, you see, because it's our side. Aussie Mix 73, $2. $2. One for you, Chris, and the other dollar is to start a St. Patrick fund in case shit goes south for him. Just kidding. Hope he does great. Thanks for all you do, Chris. Much respect, sir. Thank you, Aussie Mix. I think he's going to be just fine. He's going to focus on his businesses and other stuff, and it's all good. What we know about the U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal from the New York Times. Officials in Ukraine and the Trump administration said they have reached a deal that would give the United States revenues from Ukraine's minerals and other natural resources after an intense pressure campaign by the American president. Was it intense? Really? Was it? Or was it just worked out a long time ago between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, the man who actually controls that territory, since it's not the comedic actor and illegitimate president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, although he's doing a wonderful job of making all these people look like fools. Again, if all of this was going to have played out before, if all of it was scripted, of course it was, then either Donald Trump is redirecting this thing or we are getting dog walked into an even greater and deeper form of dystopia. And either is possible, and we can hope it's the first, and we can expect it's the first and prioritize that view of things because it's a lot better, to be honest. But if it turns out not to be that, at least we are paying attention and cognizant, and we will see the warning signs as they approach. And if we do our jobs correctly, then the people will be on our side. And no matter what happens, the people will be prepared. Okay? So it's all going to work out. There's no blackpilling, none whatsoever. Just saying, hey, we don't know what the future is going to hold. And the truth is, it's only an informational future because on the timeline of people with access to this information, which is well ahead of where we are, all these things are already done deals. Terms of the agreement. It is not clear if the two sides have reached final agreement on the terms of the deal. A draft seen by the New York Times dated February 25th described the creation of a U.S.-controlled fund that would receive revenue from Ukraine's natural resources. Missing from the draft was Mr. Trump's initial demand that Ukraine contribute $500 billion to a fund owned by the United States and pay back twice the amount of any future American aid. What a deal that would be. It's like this money's just going to come from nowhere. It's just going to grow on trees or something, as though someone was creating it from nothing, and then it will just disappear. Under the draft agreement, Ukraine would contribute into the fund half of its revenues from the future monetization of natural resources, including critical minerals, oil, and gas. The fund would not draw on revenue from existing mines, oil wells, and other natural resources business. The United States would own the maximum financial interest in the fund allowed under American law, though not necessarily all. It is unclear how that would be interpreted. The fund would be designed to reinvest some revenues into Ukraine. The draft vaguely referenced security guarantees, but did not signal any specific U.S. commitment to safeguarding Ukraine's security, a provision Kyiv has vigorously pressed to include as its war against Russia enters its fourth year. A copy of the agreement obtained Wednesday by the New York Times included a sentence stating that the United States supports Ukraine's effort to obtain security guarantees needed to establish lasting peace. Okay, so the approval process, blah, blah, blah. Volodymyr Zelensky, give me a break. Ukraine controls more than 100 major deposits of critical minerals, according to a study by the Kyiv School of Economics. I'm sure that they are not lying in any way. Titanium, lithium, rare earths, manganese, zirconium, graphite. Okay, zirconium, how about that? Artificial diamonds, nuclear fuel rods as well. Gosh, the things we are going to learn. Donald Trump was asked over and over and over again in the cabinet meeting, the press portion of it today, about the security guarantees and what was going to happen with peacekeeping troops. And you will notice that when the members of the media are attempting to ask Donald Trump questions these days, they are consistently asking him questions based on stories that they have put out within the last usually 24 hours, last few hours. And they're attempting to ask them in a way that will generate headlines. They'll get Donald Trump to say something that will make it seem like they were telling the truth earlier. And then there's a controversy. Donald Trump didn't fall into that trap at all. He actually castigated them today for asking these questions over and over and over again. How many times are you going to ask this question? He said something at least to that effect. Now, General Kellogg, one of the members of the envoy sent to Europe and then Riyadh last week, along with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, was on Fox News last night with the milquetoast Kayleigh McEnany.
So I think they understand. They're not going back. And once we do this, they're not going back.
General Kellogg, do we have a framework with Ukraine for a rare earth minerals deal?
Hey, Kayleigh, it's good to be with you tonight. Well, we've both been in the White House, and you've been the White House spokesman. I will let the president make that announcement, if and when, and I'll let Caroline talk about it as well. With that, I'm done with that with that subject. I'd rather stay away from it right now. It's up to them.
Okay, fair enough. There's definitely, I think we can agree. I'll let the president make the announcement. But there's been some movement because Zelensky previously said, I will not sign what 10 generations of Ukrainians will have to pay back. And it's been widely reported just now, the comments from the president seem to be moving in a positive direction. Tell me about some of the deal making that President Trump is doing behind the scenes. He seems to be the one, along with you and others, Mike Waltz, moving this forward to a deal that would benefit the American people.
Well, look, this is classic Trump. I mean, look, we've been with him before. I mean, he is the ultimate deal maker. And you sit here in just almost stunned silence after 35 days what he does. You know, I go back to, there's a book I read long ago called Presidential Command by Peter Rodman. And he said there are two great things about very, very successful presidents. One is the ability to communicate, and the other is the ability to rely on instincts. And his instincts are off the chart, President Trump. And his ability to communicate is off the charts. And what happened with the last administration, President Biden, he didn't even talk to people. He hasn't talked to Kim Jong-un, didn't talk to Kim Jong-un in 4 years, didn't talk to President Putin in over 2.5 years. President Trump reaches out right away. He knows he has to talk to anybody out there that is going to be involved in deal making. And
it's interesting that he says that Biden didn't talk to Putin in 2.5 years, and that is the common story. I suspect that Biden didn't talk to Putin at all, but the 2.5 years, that's almost the entire duration of the very brutal invasion. Again, Monday was the 3-year anniversary of the very brutal invasion. I'm actually going to have to go back and see if I can find, I'll do it while this continues to play. But I want to see if I can find any stories about Biden ever talking to Putin.
He does that exceptionally well. And it's fascinating to watch him work, not only with Ukraine right now, but with Russia as well, what he's doing with China, what he's doing with South and Latin America. It's an absolute masterclass in how to be a president and how to lead. And he's doing that. And after 35 days, it's just amazing the results he's gotten. And I'm very, very positive about what he's going to do with this war, the largest war in Europe since World War II. And I absolutely believe and trust in him that this war is going to come to a conclusion in the near term. Very confident.
General Kellogg, that's good to hear for a lot of people. There have been some flashpoints with Zelensky, And, one of them that I came across in Axios was February 12th. There was supposed to be a meeting between Zelensky and Scott Bessent. And that meeting was delayed, and President Trump mentioned that Zelensky might have been rude. There might have been sleeping in. There's just been a lot. And I'm curious how you would characterize the relationship now, because I know President Trump, he's someone who he works with these individuals. He pushes them, and he achieves remarkable things, like the Middle East peace accords that we had 4 on his watch. First time in 25 years. We had even gotten 1, then 4 pile up. He has this interesting relationship with foreign leaders, and he pushes them to the brink, but then gets something in the end.
Yeah, he's very tough. I mean, but he's very honest. He says that I'm going to do a deal, whatever the deal is, that is best for the American people. He always says it's always going to be the American people first. I was always amazed when the first time.
We can leave it there. I thought it was interesting that he noted, or they noted, the reports Zelensky was supposed to meet with Bessent and then didn't, because Zelensky didn't show up for the meeting. He slept in. Well, that would be like kind of on the world stage, and for an optics perspective, that would be extremely disrespectful. And it's a little bit unusual that sort of thing is being reported, that was leaked out or reported out or whatever it was. I mean, it sounds absurd in terms of whether or not that actually happened in reality, but it's definitely happening in the narrative, and it happening in the narrative is all that needs to have actually happened for the optics of disrespect to be communicated. And that's the point. The machine says that Biden, as fake president, had a call with Putin in April of 2021. They met in person, supposedly, at the Geneva summit in June of 2021, and had another call to de-escalate tensions over Ukraine in December of 2021. The machine actually says that they had a conversation in February of 2023. And TASS, that the machine just must be wrong about that, because the source the machine gives links to a TASS article from February of 2022, prior to the very brutal invasion. All right, let's just pause for a second. I'm going to take a little peek in the chat for a moment, see how you all are doing. Mr. A. Nelson, $10, aka Anna Banana. Shit happens. I was just shocked. Life will go on for all. Yes, indeed it will. It's going to be A-okay. And, it'll just be a little bit different now. And we will continue to march forward. Okay. So Donald Trump yesterday was signing more executive orders, and I believe he's supposed to be at some point today as well. Maybe that's starting. If it is, you're more than welcome to let me know in the chat. Maybe we'll go over there. This is from whitehouse.gov yesterday, making America healthy again by empowering patients with clear, accurate, and actionable healthcare pricing information. The executive order from Donald Trump says, or the presidential action, during my first term, my administration took historic steps to correct a fundamental wrong within the American healthcare system. For far too long, prices were hidden from patients and employers, with inadequate recourse available to individuals looking to shop for care or obtain pricing information from a healthcare provider in advance of a visit or procedure. These opaque pricing arrangements allowed powerful entities such as hospitals and insurance companies to operate with insufficient accountability regarding their pricing practices, resulting in patients, employers, and taxpayers shouldering the burden of inflated healthcare costs. And we have definitely talked about this issue on this podcast, though maybe not in a couple of years or a few years. And I think that I probably told a story that kind of opened my eyes to what healthcare costs are actually charged many years ago. Probably, gosh, man, it must have been 2003, 2004. So over 20 years ago, back when I was in California, I drove down from Los Angeles to Long Beach to visit a friend. Back then, I used to wear contact lenses. I have since had LASIK, which I would highly recommend. And who knows what it's going to be into old age. But for the time being, it's been wonderful for now 15 years. So I was wearing contacts, and my eyes have an astigmatism, which means that they're not perfectly round. And so the contacts, I wore them for 15 years. They never kind of fit just right. And they would slide around in my eye and they would get dry. I've always had kind of dry eyes. You might see me blinking a lot. It's because I've always had dry eyes. And between the contacts getting dry and them not fitting exactly right, there would be times where they would slip around and I would be rubbing my eye, trying to hope that they would, moisten or go back into place. And occasionally they would catch and they would fold inside on themselves and get stuck in my eyelids. One of the worst experiences. And if you have worn contacts, maybe you've had a similar experience. So I'm driving down to Long Beach to visit my friend, and I'm doing this while I'm driving, and I'm like, oh gosh. And then all of a sudden, I can't see anything out of that eye. And so I pull over, I stop, I try to find where the lens is in my eye. If you've ever worn contacts, you will know the frustration and agony that something like this will cause. So I'm dropping drops in my eye, trying to get this contact lens out. I'm like, oh no, where is it? I look all over. Maybe it fell out. Maybe it got stuck in my hand, and I ended up dropping it out of my eye. It's somewhere in my car. I'm searching through my car. It's nighttime. I can't find it. I'm like, oh no, what if it's stuck like in my eye? And that's something that I was aware could happen. So I went to an emergency room and I had a doctor look at it. And what they did was essentially spray saline solution in my eye and then dig around in my eyelids with a Q-tip. Extraordinarily uncomfortable and obviously totally unproductive. They didn't find a thing. And so I eventually made it home, opened up a new pair of contacts. That problem is solved. I was worried that maybe it was stuck in my eye socket somewhere and that it was going to get infected. And then I was going to be like Dan Crenshaw or something for the rest of my life. And it turned out that everything was just fine. And maybe the contact disappeared in my car, and we'll never know. But I eventually got a bill from the emergency room for like $700 for obviously the emergency time. And I understand that staffing a facility and keeping that facility open is an expensive thing. And you're going to be paying a premium at an emergency room if you go for some minor medical treatment and whatever. But it was 10 minutes of a doctor's time, a spray of saline solution, which costs nothing, and a Q-tip, which costs nothing. So I immediately understood, wow, they charge an extraordinary amount of money. And so I called the facility, and I think I had them send me an itemized form, and everything is so overcharged. I was shocked by it. Now, I didn't have medical insurance or whatever, so I had to pay that. There were programs, you can get the fees lowered, whatever. The story is now over. Forget about the story. The point was, I've always had this understanding that the upcharges on whatever they are doing as soon as you enter a medical facility are unbelievable. And the reason they get away with those fees being unbelievable is because for almost everyone, the insurance company foots the bill. So the medical facility will charge whatever it is they charge. They will send those charges to the insurance company. You might get a bill for a copay or something, but very rarely would the person, the customer essentially, but the patient in medical terms, very rarely would they ever get any understanding, any transparency at all as to what the medical providers are actually charging for their services. And because there is that middleman, and maybe that is the middleman Donald Trump often talks about when it comes to pharmaceutical companies and whatever else, that the fees are all totally hidden by the middleman, the way the system is arranged. And so I always, in political conversations, of which I had many over the years in Los Angeles, even leading up to when I started this particular podcast back in 2020, arguments that I would get into online about Bernie Sanders, the key to all of that socialist nonsense. We're just going to give universal health care to everybody. We're going to have Medicare. That's going to provide health care for everyone. And then at that point, the costs wouldn't matter anymore. No one would ever see a cost. The government's paying for everything. Don't worry, your taxes are going to go up, but it's going to be totally worth it, even though you will never know what any of those numbers ever will be ever again. Okay. And so I was always arguing about that stuff. What we actually need to bring down healthcare costs is price transparency, because if they can get away charging like $50 for a spray of saline solution, I don't know what it actually was. I don't remember at all. Or $100 for a Q-tip, whatever. That's where the waste and the abuse are. And then you add in like the torts, the medical malpractice, all that stuff. That's its own separate issue. But on this side of it, if the people knew how much that stuff cost, then they would say, well, then why are you charging the insurance company 10x or 20x or 50x? Because the insurance company is going to have to make that money somewhere. And we know that there's a bunch of people who are free riders on the insurance industry, which means that we are getting charged a hell of a lot more for our medical insurance than the procedures and the supplies and the doctor's time could ever possibly justify. And so if you want to keep the system, that corrupt system, in place, then one thing you would never want the public to understand is how much the medical services and the products, etc., actually cost in terms of a real market value. And so it was always hidden from us. And I was a liberal throughout all of that time. And then obviously after 2016, I've told the story many times, but Donald Trump won. I immediately realized that everyone I was listening to was wrong and making me look stupid as a byproduct of them being wrong. And it's not too far after that down the road that you realize, oh, wait, they're wrong on purpose. They're actually just lying to me. And so, that began the journey, of course. But Donald Trump did this in his first term. And I remember being like, hey, guys, all of you who are saying that the Democrats are going to solve this healthcare problem that we have in the United States, and that free healthcare or the public option or any of these other things is the solution to our healthcare problem. Well, this right here, this thing Donald Trump is doing, that's the actual solution. So why are you telling me we need socialism when all we actually need is market transparency? And then obviously the legal side is another separate part of this thing. So let's go through a little bit more of this Trump order. Pursuant to Executive Order 13877 of June 24th, 2019. So that's when it was, 2019. I remember being like, hey guys, I don't know what you want me to say, but the thing that Donald Trump is doing, that's good. So this executive order, improving price and quality transparency in American healthcare to put patients first. My administration issued paradigm-shifting regulations to put patients first by requiring hospitals and health plans to deliver meaningful price information to the American people. These regulations require hospitals to maintain a consumer-friendly display of pricing information for up to 300 shoppable services and a machine-readable file with negotiated rates for every single service the hospital provides. Health plans to post their negotiated rates with providers, as well as their out-of-network payments to providers and the actual prices they or their pharmacy benefit manager pay for prescription drugs. And health plans to maintain a consumer-facing internet tool through which individuals can access price information. One economic analysis from 2023 estimated the impact of these regulations, if fully implemented, could result in as much as $80 billion in healthcare savings for consumers, employers, and insurers by 2025. Hey, that's right now. Another report from 2024 suggested healthcare price transparency could help employers reduce healthcare costs by 27% across 500 common healthcare services. Recent data has found the top 25% of the most expensive healthcare service prices have dropped by 6.3% per year following the initial implementation of price transparency during my first term. Unfortunately, progress on price transparency at the federal level has stalled since the end of my first term. Hospitals and health plans were not adequately held to account when their price transparency data was incomplete or not even posted at all. The Biden administration failed to take sufficient steps to fully enforce my administration's requirement that would end the opaque nature of drug prices by ensuring health plans publicly post the true prices they pay for prescription drugs. The American people deserve better. Making America healthy again will require empowering individuals with the best information possible to inform their life choices. By building on my historic efforts of my first term, my administration will make more meaningful price information available to patients to support more competitive, innovative, affordable, and higher quality healthcare system. So once again, how about that? Donald Trump in 2025 implementing the exact policies he already implemented in the first term. What would it look like if, in the scenario I often describe, Trump had been cheated out of his election victory in 2020, obviously. The rest of the story continues on as we all have understood it. The central narrative, of course. Joe Biden set up as the fall guy, of course. The administration of the fake and illegitimate Joe Biden in the last year becoming an exposure op on the fake and illegitimate Joe Biden. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, the mainstream media begins talking about how actually Joe Biden has been mentally impaired this entire time. He's been dealing with dementia. He's just not really there. He falls asleep. He's never around. The administration is making a ton of mistakes. Man, Joe Biden, he's responsible for this whole immigration problem we just began telling you about. He's gotten us into these wars, this awful exit from Afghanistan. You remember the inflatable plane driving down the runway, the effeminate Afghan boy smiling and waving his hands? Oh, it's the last plane out of Kabul. Look at how terrible this is. Joe Biden, he just can't do the job. He did all these wonderful things implementing the Great Reset agenda. All these wonderful things to please his liberal base. Now he's just doesn't have it anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Joe Biden out. Actually, just kidding. Joe Biden's stepping down from running in his fake campaign, having not run in a primary. They didn't really hold one, did they? And then Kamala, she's right there to run as a fake candidate in a fake election that the uniparty right was going to win the whole time. Whichever Trump replacement it would have been. Would it have been Ron DeSantis at the top of that ticket? Ron Deep Status, I think I'm gonna start calling him. And by golly, there was an interesting post earlier today, and I'll see if I can find it. I was out on a run, and I didn't really pay much attention to it because, to be honest, I don't like Ron DeSantis at all because of, obvious reasons. But I also am very hesitant to spend too much extra time at this point going after him because, obviously we've talked the entire time about how it could potentially be an op. And just in the instance that it is, there's no reason to belabor a point that I have made in a battle that has already been won. This was Roger Stone earlier today, though, on X, formerly Twitter. Meet Governor Ronald P. DeSantis. The P stands for pussy whipped. His wife is a self-important, self-centered, entitled, annoying bitch who people instantaneously dislike upon meeting her. She will get crushed in the Republican primary for governor. I pray she runs. Now that is quite the interesting post. I would not say those things about Casey DeSantis. I don't think that those are the sorts of things that need to be said, although Casey was a ridiculous and clownish character throughout the fake campaign of Ron DeSantis during the fake primary. She was put forward as a top choice for Florida governor to replace Ron DeSantis next year. And since then, Donald Trump preemptively endorsed Byron Donalds, and then Byron Donalds announced that he was running. Did Trump false start the Byron Donalds campaign? Will Casey DeSantis jump in and create havoc, causing a fake primary in the Byron Donalds race? Quite possibly. Who is the uniparty representative? Is it Casey? Is it Byron? Is it both? Now, I know that Byron is a hardcore MAGA warrior, just like Ron was. We shall see. We shall see. I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, yes, I do. Okay. So one of the Trump light replacements in the uniparty, whichever one they would have put up, maybe it would have been Ron. I think it probably would have been Ron. Maybe Ron with Nikki, Ron with JD. They would have gotten in there because there's no way that Joe Biden was going to win. They had to make him the fall guy. Blame all the corruption on Joe. Blame the failures of the administration on Joe, the wokeness on Joe. Joe did it all. Joe did it all. Hans Kamala, well, she didn't do it. She could be the great new candidate going forward, and she's a woman of color, and that's important. But she wasn't going to get it. You had to switch the narrative. It's the uniparty left, the dominant central narrative, and then the uniparty right, the controlled opposition within the central narrative. And then you just flip that dynamic on its head. Then all of a sudden, the uniparty right side of the Great Reset narrative is the dominant narrative within the central narrative. And the uniparty left side is the controlled opposition narrative now. Okay? Donald Trump could have been out of the picture entirely. And all of this still could have played out in exactly the same way. And who would be taking responsibility now for the price transparency that Donald Trump put in place in the first term? Well, that would be Ron or JD or Nikki or whoever. And it would be coming back just like it is now. Except Trump's here and he can take credit for it. It didn't actually go away under Joe Biden to be then claimed for credit by someone else. Donald Trump gets credit for what he did in the first term, preempting all of these things that would have given the credit to the uniparty for the fruits of the Great Reset agenda as it's being put in place. And instead, Donald Trump sprinting down the highway, grabbing on to the Trans Am spoiler, smashing through that window, climbing through just as though it's the beast on January 6th on the way to the very violent insurrection. He tosses the driver out of the car. The driver, of course, is Klaus Schwab. And he jumps in, commandeering the vehicle and driving it forward. Now, all of the fruits of the Great Reset agenda as planned and scripted, rather than going to the credit of the uniparty, are going to the credit of American ideals and Americanism And it's Donald J. Trump on behalf of the American people. Make America great again. Now, I think that's what's happening. I could be convinced in the future that we're all just being dog walked into dystopia. But I think that Donald Trump has drafted off of the Great Reset agenda, grabbed onto that spoiler, smashed through the black window, the black window, the black mirror. Hey, you could do that too. The back window, commandeer the vehicle, and now he's racing ahead, taking that exit off to the side, and it's all going to be okay. I hope that's what's happening. But were Donald Trump not there, all of this would still be marching forward. It would just be the cast of the fantasy team getting all the credit for all of these things. And instead, Donald Trump shows, oh no, hey, I'm just going to do these with executive action. And the fantasy team, well, I don't know what they're going to do, but I guess they can have credit for some of this at some point. Oh yeah, Pete's doing all this. Oh yeah, RFK's doing all this. Oh yeah, Tulsi, she's responsible for all of these declassifications. Totally. All right, we're going to pause just a second after that little rant. Other people sharing in my pain for the contacts. I get it. Snowcat says that eye story felt like Edgar Allan Poe. Well, I'll take your word for it. I don't know if you mean my poetic delivery or if maybe there was just some Poe that dealt with an issue much like that one. I'll just take it as a compliment. The New York Times, of course, and other media outlets as well, picking up on Donald Trump's transparency order. Trump returns to a favorite issue, healthcare transparency. And just to go through a bit of this, it's not long. Healthcare prices have historically been shrouded in secrecy, negotiated in private between doctors, hospitals, drug companies, and the insurance companies that pay their bills. The parties in those negotiations have fought hard to keep those numbers out of public view, saying that confidentiality is key to their bargaining process. Economics literature, which relied heavily on a study of Danish concrete prices in the 1990s, has suggested that making them public could actually backfire by increasing healthcare prices. Oh, look at that, everybody. We have a 30-year-old study that says, you know what? We need to keep these prices secret. Markets can only work if no one knows about them. That way, we can control them and just call them free, which is what they have always done. We should understand, as I've said many times, this is communism, everybody. We're already in it. We don't have free markets in America. There might be capitalism in this working class lower tier where whoever is able to climb over everyone else in the rat race might have an opportunity if they are willing to do totally corrupt things or be totally compromised by their own personal failings. Maybe they will be brought into some purgatory realm that isn't quite up there with the elites, but is better than what the rest of us get. So perhaps there's some reward there in the capitalism. And if you happen to be innovative enough to think of something that could help the regime in major ways, well, then they will take that from you, reward you, show you off to the rest of your lower class as something to aspire to be. And then they'll say, look at that guy. American dream right there. But beyond that, the only capitalism in America is the competition for treats from the global regime. Now, this isn't an argument against capitalism. It is an argument that we don't have capitalism, okay? Not true capitalism in any way. We don't have free markets. All of it is controlled from the top, the same way the global regime controls every other nation. Media, so everybody's reputation within the party of false decorum. Finances, trade routes, resources, and ultimately the military. And if you scale that down, well, the police, the FBI, they can arrest you, take away your property, throw you in prison, whatever it is. There are plenty of ways for them to exercise leverage. The point is getting out of that. How do we do it? Back to the New York Times. But with two major health rules issued jointly by the Departments of Health and Human Services, Treasury, and Labor during his first term, Mr. Trump tried to force the industry to become more transparent. One rule required hospitals to publish the prices they charged to various insurers for a set of common services. Another required insurance companies to publish a more comprehensive list of the prices they had negotiated with various healthcare providers. Industry compliance has been grudging, slow, and marked by extensive litigation. After the rules became final in 2021, many hospitals simply declined to publish the required lists. Others tried to make their price information hard to find. The Wall Street Journal reported that several had inserted code into their web pages listing prices that made the pages impossible to find using an internet search engine. Gosh, isn't that amazing? Nevertheless, the requirement did provide new information to researchers, employers, and some patients about the nature of healthcare prices and their wide and often inexplicable variation. So you see, it would be better if they kept those prices hidden. See that 30-year-old Danish cement report. Is that what? Oh, concrete. Sorry. Are those the same? I've always wondered that. I don't think that they are. Nevertheless, the requirement did provide new information to researchers. Oh, that's what I already read. The policy has so far not delivered one of Mr. Trump's key promises from his last term, that price transparency would significantly drive down healthcare costs. Healthcare prices have continued to rise. The new executive order will task HHS, Treasury, and Labor with considering new ways to expand the reach of current initiatives, but it does not call for much in the way of specific new policy. Any meaningful new transparency initiative would require regulatory action or legislation or both, but the signing of the new order does suggest that Mr. Trump has not forgotten about this priority, which he often referred to in his first term as bigger than healthcare itself. And it is. It is. This is, in my mind, the obvious way for these things to be fixed. Now, how could they be thwarted in the fake and illegitimate administration? The Joe Biden administration, of course. In a devolution scenario where Donald Trump is still exercising some measure of control. Well, we have our reality prime layer, and then we have our false reality layer of the government. And I have suggested for a long time that the deep state, the bureaucratic administrative state operating on behalf of the foreign occupying power controls that false reality layer, that bureaucratic administrative state, that deep state. And to the extent that they work in conjunction, in coordination with, in partnership with the health insurance companies, the pharma companies, the medical providers, etc., well, then that false reality layer, that bureaucratic administrative deep state, is governing and setting policy for those partners who are actually the on-the-ground, consumer-facing part of that industry. So there's the level of control that we talk about, devolution as a backstop, right? The military makes sure that nothing kinetic and bad happens around the world. They limit in some way. I've also described it with John on devolution as like a playpen. You put a toddler in a playpen, they've got the toys in there, and within that, they can do a lot of things. They have total freedom within that space, but there is no getting out of that space. So they are limited ultimately on what they can do. And I think that the same sort of constraints were put in place to deal with the bureaucratic administrative deep state working on behalf of the foreign occupation over the last 4 years via something like devolution, if not devolution itself. And so that layer of government, quote unquote, because it's not actually a layer of our government, it is just a foreign occupation, can still interface with the on the ground consumer facing parts of that industry and set policy and do that to the customer's detriment. And they could probably also say, as you just saw with that Wall Street Journal report, disclosing that some of the providers and insurance companies, et cetera, were hiding prices. They could probably say, well, wait a second, we're complying with that order. The prices are on the website. Sorry, though. No one's able to find it. Shucks. I guess that sucks. Well, if no one can actually find the prices, then meeting the terms of that price transparency, a writer like this one from the New York Times could say, well, these changes have been made and implemented and nothing for the consumer has actually changed. The price setting mechanisms within the healthcare market have not actually produced the results that Donald Trump suggested they would produce. So we haven't seen those changes. Very tricky, isn't it? Let us continue on. All right, so we're going to get into some of Donald Trump's amazing Oval Office session, I should say, yesterday. And I just want to make abundantly clear for myself before I begin playing this and sharing this that I have located, yes, I have, the proper moment. Wonderful. I love it when a plan comes together. And by plan, I mean my timestamps on YouTube. Okay, so this is Donald Trump yesterday in the Oval Office as he was doing these signings. There is this like 12-minute stretch, and we're going to go through most of it, and I'll put it on 1.25 so that we can hurry things along a bit, where Donald Trump is base as hell, absolutely positively hilarious, and Howard Lutnick is operating as his sidekick the entire time, and it's kind of incredible. And as I say based, I realize that I forgot to share with everyone the image of these based dictators. Now, Modi is, for whatever reason, not called a dictator by the mainstream, but you got Putin there, you got Xi there. President Putin has officially invited the following world leaders to attend Russia's annual Victory Day parade on May 9th in Moscow, and that is Narendra Modi, Xi Jinping, and one Donald Trump. And I just want to make sure to remind what this Russia May 9th celebration is. We talked about this last year. It commemorates the Soviet Union's triumph over Nazi Germany in World War II. The annual event marks the formal surrender of German forces in Berlin on May 8th, 1945. And the whole East Berlin, West Berlin thing is going to require another deep look at some point. But it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Donald Trump actually does go to Russia for that May 9th event. I kind of hope that he does. Media heads will explode. It's going to be wonderful. And we are still fighting that same regime. So let's have the entire world declare victory over that global regime on May 9th. Will it be? What do we have? Yeah, 2.5 months till then. Going to be interesting. Now, all Putin needs to do is invite Mohammed bin Salman and Jair Bolsonaro, little rocket man over there in Korea. That would be great. What an event that would be. All right, so let's check out Donald Trump as he's being at his most dictatorial here. He's just taking over parts of the world.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots. As you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, AP has been terrible. I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly. That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is the Gulf of America. And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it is, it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying.
That's America. And yeah, it is America. Let's continue, though.
Last week, I spent some time with two government officials for Canada. I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state. And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make a lot of things, including the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be freeing up, and I've asked Howard Lutnick to get that done with Lee and everybody, Lee Zeldin, environmental. We're freeing up our forests. We're going to be able to take down trees. Right now, you know, we're so restricted environmentally. We're going to be freeing it up with an emergency order. We have an emergency.
And so I just want to take a pause there. So Canada is the 51st state. We're going through some of this. We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. Donald Trump is clearly making the point that the global regime's economic system, the top-down control, this is going to be produced here and sent here for this much money. That's how this area is going to be funded. We're going to fund their government programs with this money received from the United States, etc. That is a manipulation from the top down that would create a situation like that, because the United States as a sovereign nation would never make somewhere else and overpay for that which they could just produce here, creating new American jobs and providing more economic activity. And that's obvious. So that the fact that that situation ever existed in the first place is proof of that top-down centralized control over this part of the global economy. And of course, it's many parts of the global economy. And as we discussed last week, any deal for rare earth minerals and the project that the United States and Russia are talking about, the energy project in the Arctic, that's the purpose of controlling Greenland and controlling Canada. As we have said here for the entire time, it's very clear he wants full naval control around all of North America, from Alaska, around Canada, around Greenland, around the United States, around Mexico, into Central America, and right through that Panama Canal. And all of that will be controlled and secured by the United States, while Russia, and maybe China, take the rest of the protection of those northern seas. It's like we are reversing the top-down control described in 1984. We have these three global superpowers, these three world superpowers, and now they're all on the other side. Like everything has just flipped and reversed. It's a polarity shift, perhaps, but not in the way they talk about it.
And we're going to be freeing up our forests. We have more forests than almost anybody, and great lumber, great trees. We don't need anybody's trees. We don't need trees from Canada or anybody else. In fact, we have to put the slits, as they call them, the area, 50, 60-yard area in between areas of trees. It stops the fires. And frankly, California should have been doing that for years. It's almost getting late. They're going to run out of forests the way they're going. What a shame. And by the way, the water is flowing in California. I hope you people have seen it. But the water is flowing. Do you have a picture of that? I'd hold it up. Do you have a picture of that? Get a picture of it, please. You know, we had little skirmish in California. I can't believe we had to do that, but we opened up the water in California.
We had a little skirmish in California. I can't believe we had to do that. Just let it sink in.
Yeah, the water was flowing into a place called the Pacific Ocean, which for the Pacific Ocean is only a drop. But for us, it's more water than we can use in California. So I'll get you some photographs, but it's a beautiful sight. The water is flowing in California, beautiful water from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. And it flows down, and instead of being routed out to the Pacific Ocean, and this has been going on for 20 years more in order to take care of a certain species of fish, which wasn't doing very well without water. So that's a big deal. It's like not reported. It's incredible. But California has a lot of water. That's going to take.
Let's pause on the water thing for a second, because I want to mention, you just saw the clip skip there a bit, and it happens a couple of times. And I don't know if it's the feed coming from the Oval Office. I don't know if it's this particular YouTube, this instance of this being shown on YouTube that is causing those skips. But it's worth mentioning that they have changed over the policy in the press briefing room and for the White House press pool. All of this used to be controlled by the White House Correspondents Association, which always does that annual dinner where they have a comedian come in and like roast the president. Oh, I'm telling jokes. It's always Stephen Colbert or some communist. And they would always be in control of the pool feed. And so they would transcribe whatever it is that the president says and then send that out to all the other news organizations. So it's like they're officially creating the record of the president's words and sending them out. Now, I don't know that the changeover was because they have manipulated the president's language at times in the past. I think we're going to find out. I haven't dug into it yet. If one of you knows, by all means, go ahead and tell me. I have a feeling we'll probably get information on that at some point. But now one of those pool feeds is being turned over to Newsmax. So it's going to be a friendly feed rather than an enemy feed. And who knows, perhaps, maybe we'll just take a second and we'll check with the machine. Were there any instances of Trump disputing the transcript compiled by the White House press pool in his first term? That seems like a well-composed question. There were no specific instances. It's worth noting that Trump had a contentious relationship with the press. No, that's not particularly worth mentioning. That's not what I was at. Not what I was asking whatsoever. Oh gosh, this is so funny. So they are covering this as, let's just take a second on this. This will be worth it. I didn't go into this today and I wasn't intending to talk about it, but what the hell? We have the time and the space and the energy. Why not learn something new? White House moves to pick the pool reporters who cover Trump. This is the New York Times today, or yesterday, sorry. The Trump administration said on Tuesday it would start handpicking which media outlets were allowed to participate in the presidential press pool, the small rotating group of reporters who relay the president's day-to-day activities to the public. The change breaks decades of precedent. Let's skip down. Because presidents often hold events in smaller settings like the Oval Office, the pool format ensures that the public is provided with an accurate record of a president's comments and actions. The pool reporters who witness the events distribute their reporting to the hundreds of other news outlets that cover him. The pool is often made up of journalists from organizations like CNN, Reuters, the Associated Press, ABC News, Fox News, and the New York Times. Donald Trump has had issues with all of those, legal issues with all of those, save maybe Fox News. That's really something. And the White House Correspondents Association rebuked the move in a blistering statement. This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States, wrote Eugene Daniels. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps. And of course, we are through the looking glass on that one because they always had control over it. The Uniparty had its Uniparty journalists reporting what it is the president said and providing the official record. Skipping down, in recent weeks, the seat has been occupied by some journalists who strive for accuracy and fairness, such as the reporters at Axios and Semaphore, and by partisan figures who are sympathetic to the Trump administration, such as the podcast host Sage Steele. Sympathetic to the Trump administration. Being sympathetic to the president is too much bias for them. Sage Steele is not MAGA. This is crazy. A spokesperson for the New York Times said on Tuesday the White House's move to handpick favored reporters to observe the president and exclude anyone whose coverage the administration may not like is an effort to undermine the public's access to independent, trustworthy information about the most powerful person in America. And they don't give independent and trustworthy information. You really do have to wonder if there are instances of the pool intentionally misreporting the things the president was saying on the record. That's rather incredible. Okay, let us continue with Trump's press event.
Take care of farmers. It's going to wetten up the land, and it's going to go all the way down to Los Angeles, where they have curfews on water, where they have all sorts of blocks on water. You can only use so much. We're going to put until just recently, they were going to put a number of gallons per person living in a house in Beverly Hills on water. You're not going to have that problem anymore. Do you have a picture? Let me just see what that looks like. How beautiful is that? Look at that beautiful water flowing. Look at that. This is coming in the dikes and other means of transportation. Isn't that beautiful? Who would believe that? That's all water they could have had. I went to the governor during my first term and I said, why don't you do this? And they said they have an environmental problem with clean water. If this water were there, you wouldn't have had those fires.
So he's taking out the picture that he posted on Truth Social a few weeks back. That water is flowing. Look at it. Big, beautiful water flowing into California, down into Southern California, rather than going out into the Pacific Ocean. Now, here's where it gets interesting.
You had sprinklers. They'd make people put sprinklers in the ceiling of a home, and they had no water in them. With this, they would have had a lot of water in them. They would have all been full. You would have had a whole different deal down there. You probably wouldn't have had a fire, but if it was, it would have been small, would have been put out. You had the fire hydrants not working in California. So it's a beautiful site. These are canals that were built. These were all built. And you saw them for years. They were empty, concrete. They call them the V-shapes or the half pipes. And they're shaped different forms, but they're shaped, and they rush down through the farm areas where the farmers can take it and down to Los Angeles. And they were sitting empty for years. And now look at that. Look at that way it looked. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up. Mr. President, I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
Now, that, my friends, is quite a statement. He stares at the camera for a moment and then says he essentially attacked California. What in the world does that mean? What a strange turn of phrase. I would direct everyone back to my episode a few weeks back. Let's just make sure that I'm directing you to the right place. I would never, ever want to misdirect you. I did an episode called Fire Retardant / Hoodwinked on January 10th of this year. And in that episode, I talked at some considerable length about the fire situation and about what we should assume when we have something like that happen, where the fire as Donald Trump described it, it's like the fire had a mind of its own. It's like it was smart, jumping from house to house, only hitting certain houses. It's like it knew what it was doing or something. We explored some theories in that episode that seemed absolutely crazy at the time. The sort of thing that no one could ever discern just by observing the situation. The sort of thing that no one would ever believe unless you were just a crazy person who was going to be wrong about absolutely everything, a conspiracy theorist who was never on the right track the entire time. And that's why he was censored in 2020. No one could ever be right about things like this, saying, oh man, maybe that is some sort of directed attack. And here he says,
and now look at that way it looked. It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up. Mr. President, I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
At the outset of your
let's just watch it one more time so that we can get the full thing. We're gonna look at him.
And now look at that way it
staring
looked.
at the camera.
It wasn't easy. We had to be very unfriendly to get into those areas. We opened it up. Mr. President, I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
At the outset of your
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? What could he mean? Did it look like he was intentionally staring into the camera, or did it not? He stared right into the camera and said, I attacked California. Well, what is California? California is a corrupt, captured state, a territory of the global regime, and some of the regime's greatest enemies live in parts of California. Now, is Donald Trump saying that to put out a message that will be responded to, and somewhere amidst that response will be the truth? Or was Donald Trump sending a message to the regime? Could be either. I don't know what it is. I do know that Rick Caruso is going to be put up as the next governor. We're still seeing signs toward that. Went on Rogan a few weeks ago. These situations are discernible. You just have to follow them over a length of time. I don't know how to take it. I have my theory. That's my theory. I'm not sure I'm right, but that was one of the strangest things that I've ever seen Trump do. And I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever in my mind that he intended to communicate it exactly that way. I want to see it one more time because I want to see the stare. And it's just sometimes it's so annoying to scroll YouTube to exactly the right place. Here we are. Let me bring it back up. I just realized that I didn't have it on screen right there. I hope I did the last time. Someone just asked, is this from today? No, this is from yesterday.
To get into those areas, we opened it up. Mr. President, I essentially attacked California. Can you believe it? I attacked California. Let's go.
I'm crazy, I know. I guess we'll have to see what all of that means. It's not me who said it. It's him who said it. It's not me who stared at the camera. It's him who stared at the camera. Okay? I'm not making Trump do these things. And people are like, well, that destroys everything that I think. Well, yeah, I know it does. Welcome to Reality Prime. Donald Trump is at war with the global regime. And we see things like the trains going off the tracks, food facilities being set on fire, pipelines being attacked. You can name any number of things. And we're told that we're not in World War III, but yet there are kinetic war events. In the central narrative, these cannot be kinetic war events because we are not at kinetic war. The United States is never at kinetic war, don't you know? We go take over other places, but that's only because those places are bad. So we'll go to war, but only to take out a very brutal dictator who's going to do something like, let's say, leave the SWIFT system, no longer use the global regime's currency, no longer go along with the standards set by that top-down economic controller. Just never the United States, never the United States. Till Donald Trump, at least. And so is that an act of kinetic war brought on by the regime or not? And what was Lahaina? Oh, we don't know. What are all those hurricanes? Well, we don't know. Isn't that crazy? Hard to say what all that is, except we know that they can control elements of the weather, if not the weather completely. I did an episode about that back in 2023 when Ron Deep Status and Gavin Newsom, our boy New, were going head to head in a little debate. Oh, it's California versus Florida. Look at how good Ron's model is. And I believe that episode was called Very Natural Disasters, August 21st of 2023. I would direct people to both of those episodes, Fire Retardant and Very Natural Disasters, if you want to hear my thoughts about these things. And I understand that they're out there, man. And I understand that once you get into this stuff, it gets real uncomfortable because you don't know which side the good guys are on. And I would suggest to people, as I have suggested consistently for the last 5 years, that the good guys aren't maybe nearly as plentiful as the TV might have you believe. That maybe those people on Fox News propping up Rick Caruso and all those very based and red-pilled podcast bros on X, formerly Twitter, people like Mike Cernovich propping up Rick Caruso, maybe they're not totally on our side just because they said they support Donald Trump. Just saying. Let's continue.
Yeah. At the outset of your administration, sir, you committed to ending the weaponization of government, to holding those accountable who participated in the weaponization of government.
Hold it. This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill.
One law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government, who supported it, accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll never happen again.
You notice him looking once again at the camera right there. And so, of course, the news headlines today, Donald Trump is targeting these law firms. Let's pull up the executive order on whitehouse.gov. Suspension of security clearances and evaluation of government contracts. I hereby direct the Attorney General and all other relevant heads of executive departments and agencies to immediately take steps consistent with applicable law to suspend any active security clearances held by Peter Koski and all members, partners, and employees of Covington and Burling LLP, who assisted former special counsel Jack Smith during his time as special counsel, pending a review and determination of their roles and responsibilities, if any, in the weaponization of the judicial process. I also direct the Attorney General and heads of agencies to take such actions as are necessary to terminate any engagement of Covington and Burling by any agency to the maximum extent permitted by law, etc., removing the security clearances of any members, partners, and employees. So one of the deep state white shoe law firms is being cut off. And here is the immediate media response from in the room.
Covington and Burlington?
Covington and Burlington.
Mr. President, may I ask you a question about Europe? So long term, do you plan to maintain the number of U.S. troops?
Wait, I just want to savor this one, please. Who would like this pen? Hey, why don't you send it to Jack Smith? A deranged person.
So for those on audio, you heard what Trump said. He took the pen he just signed the executive order with and tossed it out to one of the onlookers. Maybe that was a member of the cabinet. Maybe it was a member of the media. Who knows?
Say the people who worry that targeting an individual firm or individuals who aren't Jack Smith.
Excuse me, I've been targeted for 4 years, longer than that. So you don't tell me about targeting. I was the target of corrupt politicians for 4 years, and then 4 years after that. So don't talk to me about targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, there are approximately 2 million federal employees right now.
So he reiterates that he has been targeted for the entire time. So this is not him targeting attorneys, just like he's not targeting the media or trying to choose his own press corps or anything like that. Total inversion, a complete reversal. Polarity flip, maybe that will be something with polarity will be the title. I see Brain Strain again. Thank you very much for your help. And if you want to suggest polarity options, I'm more than happy to listen to those. But let's continue here. One last part of there's two last parts, but let's listen to this part. This is very interesting. And he continued along these lines today. And I'll tell you what I think is going on here after we hear it. So you probably began to hear that reporter talking about 2 million federal workers.
By the end of your term, what do you expect that number to be? What would you like that number to be?
Well, it'll be lower, but I can't tell you. Everybody knows I ran on downsizing government, but making government better. I ran on tariffs and making our country rich, and that's what's going to do.
So they keep asking, by the way, and we're asking again today in the cabinet meeting, what he's trying to get that number down to. It's 2 million now, they say. What are you going to get it down to? And if he says, well, it's probably only going to be about 300,000 by the end of this process, for instance, I have no idea how many it's going to be. I also don't think there's anywhere near 2 million right now. But then they would go out and say, Donald Trump is cutting the federal workforce by 1.7 million people. He's putting 1.7 million people out of work. And of course, that would then be a big crisis. And then we'll have studies on the economic impact and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So he answers that very briefly. He has no idea. They're going to figure it out as they go along. And then he turns the conversation.
We're going to be doing something else. It's going to be very, very good. We're going to be selling a gold card. You have a green card. This is a gold card. We're going to be putting a price on that card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you green card privileges. Plus, it's going to be a route to citizenship, and wealthy people will be coming into our country by buying this card. They'll be wealthy, and they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. It's never been done before or anything like this, but it's something that we're going to be putting out over the next, would you say 2 weeks out? Do you want to say a couple of words about it?
Sure. President, are there requirements for that gold card? Do you have to invest a certain amount of money in this country in order to qualify for that gold card?
Yeah, exactly.
So the EB-5 program was really lending some money, but it was full of nonsense, make-believe, and fraud, and it was a way to get a green card that was low-priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold. So they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit. Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
The gold card, well, millions, but the gold card will bring in with it people that create jobs, very high level people. I think companies will pay to get people in. For instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or Stanford or any college, and nobody knows if you can even go to work for a company. So Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card. And for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things. But generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs, and they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens, but have to pay if they create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like everybody else. So you're getting big taxpayers, big job producers, and we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Wow. And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But it could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do. Hasn't been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't give them away. And I think it's something very exciting. I think it's potentially just something that we're all very excited about. So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people. And essentially people of wealth or people of great talent, where people of wealth pay for those people of talent to get in, meaning companies will pay for people to get in and to have long-term status in the country. And I think it's something we're very, very happy about. Would you have anything to say about that?
Well, many other countries, by the way, do this, including, of course, your 51st state does that.
And the money's earmarked for deficit reduction?
It may be earmarked for deficit, but it actually could be more money than that. I mean, if you did 10 million, you'd have $15 trillion left over. Generally, it's going to be pay down debt, yes.
Do you need Congress for this? Do you think you need
No, we don't need Congress, no, because we're not doing citizenship. We're doing the card.
So that's the gold card. And I think that makes a lot of sense. If you got these tech companies bringing in H-1B visa employees, and I'm not saying that's exactly what this is. Obviously, they're talking about a different form of immigration here, but the same idea that we were discussing during that part of the conversation, talking about these very high-skilled workers. They're some of the best people, some of the smartest people from foreign countries who come over here, get an education at our high-end universities, and then want to stay in the country. And there's organizations abusing the system, or maybe things don't work out and we can't retain the top talent. That is something that Trump has talked about for a pretty long time. So if you consider these tech companies, like we did Social Network on Story Hour last week, Facebook, Meta is worth $1.87 trillion. If they need 100 of these people, and they're going to pay $5 million for each one of these gold card visas to keep this talent here in America, well, then you got $500 million. And so that's how Trump is thinking of this thing. And I would suggest that there's probably millions of people who are going to be fitting these qualifications who are already here. And Trump already knows about that with some of these companies. And so rather than all of the abuses of the system and the manipulations of the system, the benefits going to transnational corporations or big tech companies or whoever aligned with the global regime, doing the global regime business, the benefit will go to the American people. And potentially as a drainage mechanism, if you need to eliminate massive parts of the so-called national debt while also draining some of these companies that have been involved in criminal enterprise on behalf of the global regime, well, this is a good opportunity to eliminate dollars on a balance sheet for a corporation while eliminating dollars on the so-called national debt. So that's what I think is happening here. And I think that we're going to get a lot of this story, and I think it's going to be very effective. Now, is that the sort of thing that could happen in the Great Reset scripted narrative paradigm? Maybe. I mean, that national debt's got to disappear somehow. And they want to get everybody ushered onto a central bank digital currency. That was their plan. And we can hope that we're moving, obviously, away from that plan. The truth is, with the way the fiat money already exists, and most of us using it in primarily or only electronic form, we basically already have the central bank digital currency. They do track where we spend our money. They do cut our access off. They do change our credit ratings. They do mess with our social credit scores via social media apps, via the credit score that you might have to submit to a job if you're going out for employment. So a lot of the bad thing has already happened. You know, and I've said this countless times, like the thing that you're scared of has already happened. We are on the way out, not on the way in. I think that we are going to see this used as a drainage mechanism over the next couple of years. And Donald Trump will take credit for the idea. And I think that we are going to have a very, very good result from this and see the national debt depleted as part of the process. He's going to make America great again. He's going to make us very rich and successful. Very interesting, very creative. So much winning. We're going to get tired of winning. One more. Actually, you know what? While we're on that exact portion talking about the tech companies and whatnot, this is a Truth Social post from Donald Trump yesterday. Our incredible United States economy and undeniable American spirit have enabled the creation of the greatest technology companies on earth. Our digital economy is bigger than most of the world's countries, and the market cap of even one of our companies exceeds each European country. Instead of empowering their workers and creating opportunities, foreign governments have instead tried to tax, fine, and hinder American tech companies. Both friend and foe have been treating American tech companies harshly, as if our companies are their piggy bank. This will now end. It is my objective to level the playing field and end these attacks. We are putting these countries on notice to end their unfair treatment of American companies, large and small. Our companies are the greatest investors in the world, and their investments will only go to where America is treated well. Our ingenuity, grit, drive, and perseverance have built America. If these countries want to participate in the AI industrial revolution, it is time to choose sides with America, not against us. And again, Donald Trump is talking about the American good twin there, not America. If we think about these things in good twin, evil twin, which we should, honestly, I can't even imagine talking about things like America does this, Mexico does this, India and Russia do this. No, it's not how the world works. It's obviously not how the world works. And understanding the global regime, its presence in all these countries, and the top-down centralized control that it has exercised for generations, not recognizing that in every bit of analysis on geopolitics is, I don't know, retarded. So when Donald Trump says America, he's talking about the American good twin. And we don't need to think about it in any other way. Man, it is really incredible. I tried to ask the machine while that video was playing before. I can't find an instance of any discussion of Donald Trump saying that he attacked California. You would think, wouldn't you, that the media would jump all over that? That is incredible. Not a word. Couldn't they nail Donald Trump on that? Did the mainstream media not watch his Oval Office press conference? And of course they did, because they reported on the gold cards like crazy. He said it 2 minutes prior to talking about the gold card, maybe a minute prior. What incredible times we're in, huh? Let us continue Now, there's one last thing I want to show from Trump's Oval Office session yesterday. Here it is.
All of them. Look. Yeah. See that?
So Donald Trump has a stack of MAGA hats, but they don't say MAGA, and he's showing them off to the press, and I think he's going to say what it says.
Trump was right about everything. It
There
just
it
came in. Somebody said, I said, this was sent in by a fan. I said, I think we should.
That's Howard Lutnick laughing in the background, and you saw him cracking up earlier, too. He's like Donald Trump's new sidekick or something.
Should make some of them, right? But we were pretty much. You want one?
I'll pass.
Are you allowed to take one?
No,
Because
not.
he'll consider it. I know him well. He's sort of a stiff.
I said you're
Yeah,
right.
Brian, you're not a stiff. He's sort of a stiff guy. He'll take other things, but not a free hand.
Always say yes to the president. Always say yes to the
Would
president.
anybody like one?
And then Howard Lutnick saying, always say yes to the president. I mean, maybe that's good advice, but Howard Lutnick just loves jumping in and speaking basically whenever he wants. And he did it again today in the cabinet meeting. So let's go to that. We're not going to go to Lutnick, of course. I mean, not saying he's not worth talking about or anything, but for our purposes right this moment, he's not worth talking about. So let's go to the cabinet meeting today. This is Elon Musk, of course, getting asked about the federal employees. My pal John Harold, actually, maybe I'll just pull this up first because he did this on his show today. I thought it was funny. Hold for processing. Here's John today on the Daily Herald on Badlands.
I think these Make America Great Again hats are funny. I have two of them. One like he's wearing and one with the gold letters because they don't fit everybody very well. Like some people they look great on. Chris Paul looks great in the hats. Elon Musk and myself look like dorks wearing these hats. They just don't fit right. It just looks funny every time he wears it.
So thanks, John. Let's go to Elon and you will see exactly what he means immediately on screen. A little dorky right there. But let's just go with it. I'm going to speed this up just slightly.
I think that email perhaps was misinterpreted as a performance review, but actually it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse?
He said that it was actually a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse?
You have a pulse and two neurons. So if you have a pulse and two neurons, you can reply to an email. This is, I think not a high bar, is what I'm saying. This is should be anyone could accomplish this. But what we are trying to get to the bottom of is we think there are a number of people on the government payroll who are dead, which is probably why they can't respond. And some people who are not real people, like they're literally fictional individuals that are collecting paychecks. Well, somebody's collecting paychecks on a fictional individual. So we're literally trying to figure out, are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email? Which I think is a reasonable expectation for the American public would have at least that expectation of someone in the public sector.
And so we discussed that at some length on Monday. We don't need to go deeply into that again, but they're still asking. And the headlines this morning, apologies, hold on. I actually want to see if I can find this just quickly on CNN. The big story this morning was that some of Trump's cabinet was rumored to have been upset with Elon Musk. And now the story that they're running is that the cabinet meeting today was a display. It was an opportunity for Elon to show off his great power. He talked for about 3 minutes, maybe. It's so silly. These people are insane. Here we are.
I just wanted to ask you that President Trump put out a Truth Social today saying that everybody in the cabinet was happy with you. I just wondered if you had heard otherwise, and if you had heard anything about members of the cabinet who weren't happy with the way things were going, and if so, what are you doing to address those any dissatisfaction?
Elon, let the cabinet speak just for a second. Anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, well, throw them out of here.
So the reporter asks Elon, have you heard that any of these people are unhappy with you? And Trump says, well, why don't we let the cabinet speak? Are any of you unhappy with Elon? And then jokes, if you are, we'll throw you out of here. Then Howard Lutnick starts cracking up again and clapping. And then everybody else starts clapping too.
We have a lot of respect for Elon and that he's doing this. And some disagree a little bit, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think everyone's not only happy, they're thrilled. So go ahead, Elon. I'm grateful.
And President Trump has put together, I think, the best cabinet ever. Literally. So, and I do not give false praise. This is an incredible group of people. I don't think that such a talented team has actually ever been assembled.
So Donald Trump has assembled the greatest team ever. There is no distance whatsoever between Elon Musk and Donald Trump's cabinet. Whatever rumors of discord there have been greatly exaggerated. Let us continue.
Information, but the question is, does this reflect a view on your part that the American immigration system has never been properly monetized as you feel it should be?
Well, not so much monetized. It hasn't been properly run. I get calls from, as an example, companies where they want to hire the number one student at a school. A person comes from India, China, Japan, lots of different places, and they go to Harvard, the Wharton School of Finance, they go to Yale, they go to all great schools, and they graduate number one in their class, and they're made job offers, but the offer is immediately rescinded because you have no idea whether or not that person can stay in the country. I want to be able to have that person stay in the country. These companies can go and buy a gold card, and they can use it as a matter of recruitment. At the same time, the company is using that money to pay down debt. We're going to pay down a lot of debt with that. And I think the gold card is going to be used by not only for that, I mean, it'll be used by companies. I mean, I could see Apple. I've spoken with Tim Cook, and by the way, he's going to make a $500 billion investment in the country only because of the results of the election. And I think because of tariffs, he's going to want to be in the country because of tariffs. Because if you're in the country, there is no tariff. If you're out of the country, you got to pay tariffs. And that's going to be a great investment, I think, that he's making. I know it's going to be a great investment, but we have to be able to get people in the country, and we want people that are productive people. And I will tell you, the people that can pay $5 million, they're going to create jobs. They're going to spend a lot of money on jobs. They're going to have to pay taxes on that too. So they're going to be hiring people. They're going to be bringing people in and companies in. And I don't know, maybe it will sell like crazy. I happen to think it's going to sell like crazy. It's a bargain. But we'll know very soon. I think Howard and Scott, a few of you really are responsible for it. But Howard, if you want to discuss that for a couple of minutes, I think I'd like to have you. I think it's going to be a very successful program. This is commerce. So
And so he goes back into the gold card discussion. I want to just maybe skip ahead here. I don't know how long Howard Lutnick goes on, but that was not. Here we go. I want to jump past that.
like paying an athlete a bonus. I mean, Apple or one of the companies will go out and they'll spend they'll buy 5 of them and they're going to get 5 people. Look, I've had the complaint from a lot of companies where they go out to hire people and they can't hire them out of colleges. And you know what they do? They go back to India or they go back to the country where they came and they open up a company and they become billionaires. And they're employing thousands and there are a lot of examples. There are some really big examples where they were forced out of the country. They graduated top in their class at a great school and they weren't able to stay. This is all the time you hear it. And the biggest complaint I get from companies, other than overregulation, which we took care of, but we're going to have to take care of it here because a lot of that was put back on by Biden. But the biggest complaint is the fact that they can't.
So that's, again, we did it. It was totally reversed by Biden. We're going to have to do it again. So all the same things, replaying now.
Have any longevity with people. This way they have pretty much unlimited longevity. Also with the 5 million, that's a path to citizenship. So that's going to be, it's sort of a green card plus, and it's a path to citizenship. We're going to call it the gold card. And I think it's going to be very treasured. I think it's going to do very well. And we're going to start selling hopefully in about 2 weeks. Now, just so you understand, if we sell 1 million, right? 1 million, that's $5 trillion, 5 trillion. Howard was using a different number, but that's $5 trillion. If we sell 10 million, which is possible, 10 million highly productive people coming in, or people that we're going to make productive, they'll be young, but they're talented, like a talented athlete. That's $50 trillion. That means our debt is totally paid off, and we have $15 trillion above that. And now I don't know that we're going to sell that many. Maybe we won't sell many at all, but I think we're going to sell a lot, because I think there really is a thirst. No other country can do this, because people don't want to go to other countries. They want to come here. Everybody wants to come here, especially since November 5th.
All these people will be vetted, okay?
Mr. President of Ukraine, can you talk a little bit about what type of security guarantees you're willing to make?
And as I said, they go through that question again and again and again. The Tim Cook stuff is interesting, of course, because we just had the Tim Cook business the other day. Let's switch. I'm just going to hit a couple more spots in the cabinet meeting, the so-called cabinet meeting from today.
But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries where the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try, but I love the countries.
I love the countries of Europe. I love lots of countries. But the EU was created to screw the United States. What happens if the European countries retaliate? Well, they can't retaliate. They can try. Bold. What is he talking about there with the European Union? Is the European Union an organization of those states on behalf of sovereign national territories and the people who occupy those territories? No, of course it's not. The European Union is a creation of the global regime. And at some point, we might realize that that same form that was set up, all of these independent states with their own cultures, their own laws, brought together under this European Union that kind of makes them all kind of the same thing and puts them all under the same currency and the same system of laws. What does that sound like? Oh, it sounds exactly like what happened here 250 years ago. So who put that model in place here 250 years ago? That's the question. Ultimately, we're not at that point yet, not in the central narrative, at least. People who've been listening to this show for a while, we've been at that point for a pretty long time. But hey, man, got to let it all evolve. It's not there yet. Simmering. It's not totally done. Let's keep going. Is everybody just spending all their time thinking up new titles? I think that we're going to go with Polarity Express, by the way. That's a good one. Let us continue. So, more moments from today's wonderful cabinet meeting. Now, Donald Trump is talking. You heard him talking before about the Associated Press lawsuit. So that's one of those media organizations that had pool access. And now he gets asked about the CBS lawsuit. But where he goes with this question is what is the most important element. All right, here we are.
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, you're in litigation with CBS News. Is this a case that you'd like to see go to trial, or are you open to
With
some
who?
CBS, that 60 Minutes?
CBS?
Yes.
Well, CBS did something that was amazing. Kamala was unable to answer a question properly, and they took the question that they asked and they inserted an answer. They gave her an answer. This was 2 days before the election, right before the Sunday night before the election. And they wrote out they put her words from another question that was asked about a half an hour later, and they put that into the question. Nobody's ever even heard of it before. Nobody's ever heard of anything like this before, but they then did it, they say, on numerous occasions. And the FCC is looking at it very strongly, and everybody's looking at it, but nobody's ever seen anything. Think of it. They took her answers and they changed them. And I don't mean they changed a word or two, or they cut off a half a sentence, or they cut off a couple of words. I mean, I've had that happen too, but that you just say, then they say, well, we want brevity. We wanted to do it for time. They took out her answer and they inserted an entirely different answer that made her sound confident. And they did this, And I thought I've heard of everything when it comes to that stuff. No, I've never heard of it. Nobody's ever seen. So we sued, and we are in discussions of settlement.
What would a number be? Like 100? What's a number that you would think would be appropriate?
I think it's a lot. It probably did affect the election. I mean, we won by a lot.
Okay. Now, this is where it gets into the business right here. It probably did affect the election. We won by a lot.
As I said, too big to rig, but it probably did affect the election. Yeah, probably could have won by more, but I could have lost the election because of that. We have to get to honest elections. We have to go back to paper ballots. We have to go back to voter ID, one-day election ideally, or a short term, not these 48-day and 61-day elections where boxes are put in a room and, oh, let's move the boxes because we're putting in a new air conditioning system. And you see the boxes move, and then you say, well, where are all the boxes? You know, what happened to the boxes that never came back? Now, our elections are extremely dishonest. We're the only country in the world that has mail-in voting and all of these different things that we put in. No other country in the world has it. You know, France went to, they had some of the things that we had, and they went to same-day voting, all paper. And, you know, paper is very sophisticated now. It's a very sophisticated form of voting right now. It's a very safe form of voting. You know, the other things for the governors, I wish the governors would do it because the paper ballots will cost 9% of the machines. And they're 100%. You know, nothing's foolproof, but they're as close as you get. So we'll see what happens. But on the 60-minute thing, nobody's ever seen anything.
I wish the governors would do it. Man, that's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I've been talking now for 4 years plus about how Ron DeSantis and the rest of these conservative superhero governors didn't do a damn thing about elections. They didn't expose elections in their state. They didn't make their elections legitimate. Their elections are still terrible. Elections are fake. The 2024 election was fake. Donald Trump keeps talking about how our elections are fake. He talks about how the 2024 election was fake. He said it to Bret Baier on national television in an interview that was supposed to play before the Super Bowl, and it played the next night while no one was watching. He is not unclear about this. He said the same thing on Friday to the group of governors and talked about watermarks on ballots, which, funny enough, was something that Steve Pieczenik, former CIA, who everybody called a conspiracy theorist, said had already happened in the 2020 election, and they used that to track what the real vote total would have been. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe we'll find out one day. Hopefully, we will get to the bottom of all these election issues one day, but Trump keeps talking about it. Why don't the conservative podcast hosts, conservative in quotes, and the people on Fox News and the people on the fantasy team and the rest, why don't they ever talk about elections? Our government, beyond Donald Trump, who actually has the people's mandate, is totally illegitimate. It's totally illegitimate. Our elections don't work. People who are talking about elections in 2026 and 2028. And I have friends, some friends that are doing this stuff, people I respect. I wish they would stop. It's nonsense. Polls don't matter for 21 months from now. Fake elections don't matter from 21 months from now. In 21 months from now. It's so crazy to think that because Trump won, elections have been solved. They have not been solved. Nothing close. Nothing has been done. And he says the governor should do it. Why haven't the governors done it? States, that's where the elections have to be reformed, right? Donald Trump can't just snap his fingers and make it happen. He's giving these people the opportunity. Why haven't they taken the opportunity? Maybe they don't think Donald Trump's going to follow through. Maybe they think the election apparatus is going to remain in place because the thing that I've been warning about for a year before the election, hey, you know what they're going to do? Elections are fake and they don't have any way to get out of this story-wise. So what they're going to do is tell everybody that Donald Trump won the fake election, and then they'll let him go into his administration and just try to subvert it. They'll have a uniparty put in place, down ballot, House, Senate, within the states, and then they'll just try to subvert it. They'll run media operation after media operation after media operation. The people around him will help subvert them because they're part of the uniparty. And then all they have to do is ride out those 4 years. through lawfare and whatever else. Keep the election apparatus in place. Keep the people believing, put everybody back to sleep, and they can just go right on forward with the system they had before Donald Trump ever arrived, right into the Great Reset. And of course, that's exactly what they have planned. And their plan is still entirely on track because all the truthers, it turns out, like to grovel just as much as the commies do. And the polarity reversal was more than enough for them to just begin a future of groveling and cheerleading forever. Kind of explains why they get so mad, isn't it? Doesn't it? When people are not groveling and cheerleading, like this person right here. It's really incredible. There was some Washington Post news today, and before we bring up what Jeff Bezos had to say, let's recall last fall, just before the election, CNN 3 Washington Post editorial board members stepped down amid wave of canceled subscriptions over non-endorsement. Oh, cool. Before, that article was working. And now it has disappeared into CNN's paywall. So we're going to bring up the archived version. And you will remember that David Shipley, the Post's editorial page editor, met with the staffers of the opinion section, telling them that Bezos, the newspaper's owner, first expressed doubts in September about endorsing this year's presidential election. Shipley said he tried to convince Bezos to make the endorsement, but I failed, he told staff, according to the person. Cut to today. This is Jeff Bezos on X, formerly Twitter. Where did it go? Where did it go? Thought I had this. I know I saved that Bezos bit. Hold for processing. We are going to be there very shortly. Here we are. In fact, let's just go to X, formerly Twitter. This is Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, the company that is probably going to be nationalized into the U.S. Postal Service. Oh, man. It sounded so crazy a few years ago when I was talking all this stuff about the big tech oligarchs and drainage and all of that. And it's, I don't personally think it looks crazy so much anymore. Maybe other people still do. I shared this note with the Washington Post team this morning, says Bezos. I'm writing to let you know about a change coming to our opinion pages. We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. And some of my astute friends have pointed out today that personal liberties could just be support of tolerance for LGBTQ, and free markets could just be in opposition to Donald Trump's tariff policy. Free trade, as the global regime calls it. We can hope for better, but worth leaving the option open and keeping an eye on it. Bezos goes on, there was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, meaning like the only paper in Washington, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. I am of America and for America and proud to be so. Our country did not get here by being typical. And a big part of America's success has been freedom in the economic realm and everywhere else. Freedom is ethical. It minimizes coercion, and practical. It drives creativity, invention, and prosperity. I offered David Shipley, whom I greatly admire, the opportunity to lead this new chapter. I suggested to him that if the answer wasn't hell yes, then it had to be no. After careful consideration, David decided to step away. This is a significant shift. It won't be easy, and it will require 100% commitment. I respect his decision. We'll be searching for a new opinion editor to own this new direction. Hey, Jeff, I got you. Hire me. Imagine. I'm confident that free markets and personal liberties are right for America. I also believe these viewpoints are underserved in the current market of ideas and news opinion. I'm excited for us together to fill that void, Jeff. And of course, the freak out that began last fall upon Bezos declining to endorse against Trump continued today. You may have heard there was a budget agreement reached last night. The House approved of Mike Johnson's package, or at least the version they saw, and at least temporarily. This is Donald Trump in response to that this morning. Big first step for Speaker, big first step win, apologies, for Speaker Mike Johnson and America. Now let's start to balance the budget. It can be done. Signed, DJT. Well, no. No, it can't. And no, it won't be. It can be done, just not in this budget. And the Senate is not going to pass. The Senate does not approve of Mike Johnson's package. Donald Trump also this morning on Truth Social, I hope the House and Senate are able to agree on making the tax cuts permanent. And spoiler alert, I should maybe call the episode spoiler alert with all of that before, but I think Polarity Express, or maybe both. Although why waste a good spoiler alert title? Like I would be, I mean, using it today when I could use it again in the future. My good buddy, John Harold Patel Patriot, said this today because he actually does the work on these things. Why are we celebrating this? Have you guys actually read the budget resolution passed by Congress last night? I did. It does not eliminate taxes on tips, overtime, or Social Security. It doesn't actually reduce the overall deficit and outlines a national debt of $55.5 trillion by the year 2034. It instructs 7 committees to submit changes in laws within its jurisdiction to reduce the deficit by not less than a combined $2 trillion. Here is where they claim they are reducing the deficit. But at the same time, it also instructs 4 other committees to, quote, submit changes in laws within its jurisdiction that increase the deficit by not more than a combined $4.8 trillion. There are no actual tax changes. It simply says they will, quote, pursue policies that lower taxes and reduce federal spending. And he discussed this on his show, The Daily Herald, today. So Mike Johnson's package is not nearly as impressive as we were led to believe it is. And who were we led to believe it's so impressive by? Well, the same people who are always on Twitter getting attention for their based and red-pilled takes that are consistently wrong. You might have heard yesterday that Eric Prince, the CEO of Blackwater, was going to have Blackwater transporting illegal immigrants back to wherever they came from. Now, Eric Prince and his new company might have some involvement with something like that, narratively or otherwise. But Eric Prince is not the CEO of Blackwater anymore. And oh yeah, Blackwater's not even a company anymore. It changed names twice. It's called Academy now, and Eric Prince doesn't have anything to do with it. So why are the based and red-pilled Twitter influencers who are always getting retweets by Elon, and they're always the guys on the right who disseminate the central narrative from a uniparty right perspective, why are they always wrong about everything? And why are so many truthers always saying the exact same things? Why do so many of those people consider themselves truthers? It's almost like there's some other thing going on, and that some of these people are not necessarily as committed to telling the truth as we thought. They're just, trusting the plan and promoting the plan. And it's got to be somebody's plan. It's assumed to be Trump's, but is it? Let us continue. We'll see what happens with that budget. What's ultimately going to happen with that budget is that we are going to make our way into a government shutdown, whether it's next month or months beyond that. I don't know. There was an article about the passage of that budget, which the media tried to explain was not going to happen yesterday. And I remember a quote from Chip Roy talking about how if we had to pass a continuing resolution that went until June to do blah, 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 and XYZ, well, then maybe he'd be okay with that. Chip Roy. It's possible that all of these people just might be cucks and servants of the uniparty, okay? They're not in their positions legitimately. They can't prove their legitimacy in office. They're not doing anything. Donald Trump doesn't need their legislation. He doesn't need these people for anything. And he's already got Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson's a wartime speaker, and that's all it needs to be. I have a couple things here on the memo about the firings, but I don't think we need to get into that today. And so maybe we will leave it there. What I'm going to do is just check in real quickly to make sure that nobody commented in the Substack post, because everybody just asks their stuff in the subscriber stream chat now. Julie Bean says that Pam Bondi just announced on Jesse Waters that some Epstein files will be dropped hopefully tomorrow. A lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of info. Well, I will believe it when I see it. And again, I think that we are going to get a major rug pull on all of this. And, you know, when a story is delivered by the mainstream media and the fantasy team, as is the case here, and the story has been hyped by the mainstream media on the uniparty right for the last year, after ignoring it for a decade, just don't have a lot of faith that something's going to happen there. And these people are not going to be the ones who are who are the saviors here. And man, I won't say any more about that. I really hope that something happens on this issue, because it's a grave crime against humanity. Okay, what has happened? And it's not about Epstein in particular, although definitely that. But elite pedophiles and the trafficking of children is a real thing in the world, and it's horrifying. And something absolutely must be done about that. I'm not sure that this is the route toward that resolution. And it may well be a route toward a limited hangout, as it has been up till this point. And I don't trust any of these people to disseminate anything other than a limited hangout. So we shall see. I hope for good things, and I do not expect good things, because these people have been uniparty for their whole lives. I don't expect it'll change right now. But hey, man, fingers crossed. I know that people get upset when you are saying things like, hey, I know we just got cash in there. I know he said Epstein files day 1. Here we are on day 4. Not here yet. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. Maybe sometime. Maybe. And it's not a knock on cash. It's not probably ultimately his choice. I'm just saying there's a lot of things at play here. Polymathanon, $17. Your shows are always my favorite times of the day. After my wife coming home from work, of course. Such a welcome invitation to the truth and reconciliation of Reality Prime. Love you, brother. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you very much. I always appreciate your kind words. And of course, the contributions to the show. And with that, I will be back on Friday at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And what's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Down. We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling. What?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.